The Super Bowl has come, gone. The Eagles trounced the Chiefs. It was an absolute shellacking. Couldn't have gone worse for the Chiefs. It could have been Drake. That's about as bad as it could have gone for the. But on to the actual action. It was one-sided, dominant, and it had all of the hallmarks of the first Super Bowl loss for Mahomes. Had all of the hallmarks of that game. So, well, as our resident Eagles fan, we're going to give you some congratulations of your team winning.
Thank you. Yep.
We've got to talk about. But first, we've got to talk about the Chiefs and how they didn't play well. Right? Yeah. They did nothing correct in this game. Only one player on offense showed out, and he showed out in garbage time.
Yep.
Now, with Mahomes, he had a lot of expectation. People thought, okay, three-peat this, three-peat that. Now, he's come up against two teams who have dominated his offensive line, and he hasn't been able to find a single answer each of those times. Is this a little bit of a black mark against him because he's had two of the most chastening defeats in recent Super Bowls?
I think it's I think we talked about it like in the pre-show. There's band-aids in clear sight, and they kind of had a really good record this year, but it doesn't quite tell the whole story. If you're looking at how many games they've won, you think, man, this team is a complete juggernaut. But me and Pete were saying a lot of those games were really close, right down to the wire. It could have gone either way. A few calls here. If the game carried on for another 5 minutes, they would have most likely lost. And that's finally caught up with them. Like, I reckon they easily could have had 4 losses this year on a lot of those close games. And it's a lot of the same issues we've seen. Like, they've had like band-aids on the offensive line. And I think if having watched like the coach's film, we can see that the offensive line on the Chiefs wasn't able to hold up, and they were just completely bludgeoned down the whole of the game. Now, they've relied on Patrick Mahomes. They've relied on scheme for a long time. And I think that era of the Kansas City Chiefs is coming to an end. Mahomes is still great. Reed is still amazing. But you need to build like a complete team. And they didn't have a complete team. Not enough not enough to stop my Eagles.
And so I like a little bit of a qualifier for... So obviously in our prediction show, I said the Eagles should beat the Chiefs. We all looked at that Eagles defense and said the Chiefs have not seen somebody, right? They've not seen anything like it. Where all 4 guys on that defensive line can all win their reps. And all 4 guys can also win their reps simultaneously.
Correct.
And there was no escape. Now,
So yeah, I mean, for me, defense, like I said in our previous show, defense wins championship, and this game came down to the defense. Those 4 guys in the Eagles defensive line changed the game in the second quarter. They took the Eagles from 10 points to 24 points, 14 points on like back-to-back series of plays, pick 6, another pick, which the Eagles scored a touchdown of, generated by the defense, and they were winning their rushes, and I think they were too much for the Chiefs offensive line. And just a little bit on the Mahomes front a little bit. I think he hasn't reached that stage yet in his career whereby he can still make plays against an elite defensive line like Brady and Manning used to do, because even those guys, they had to do it late in their careers, whereby it's almost like they've seen everything. But it's just showing that no matter how great he is still kind of like a young quarterback.
He looked he looked shook in this game, right?
He was shook.
Yeah.
And he looked frantic. He was bailing out of plays early at times,
Yep.
expecting the rush to come.
Yep.
And
That
it wasn't
comes from
taking
that
long for the
start.
rush to come either. That was the case. But when he had a little bit more time, and then when he did finally get the ball out, his receivers dropped it, unless they were named Xavier Worthy. It was just an all-round stinker. Now, if you look at the other side of the ball, Jalen Hurts had time. When he didn't have time, he made the right decisions, apart from that one interception throw, right?
Yeah.
That one mistake, we know he made a bad decision there. Should have thrown it away. But it didn't cost them because that defense had his back, right?
Yep.
The other side of the ball helped him. Didn't matter what mistakes he was going to do, if he did any. Now, the only thing that the Chiefs managed to win is we stopped Saquon Barkley trophy. That's what they won last night because nothing else.
I mean, that was
they
their
stacked
game
the
plan.
box. They said Saquon's not going to beat us.
Yep.
But
and he didn't. Like, it was quiet on the ground. But here's the thing. They were able to stop the run, but we still attempted to run the ball with 25 carries for Saquon, 6 for Kenneth Gainwell. We still tried to establish a run, and we kind of forced them, hey, listen, understand that even though you can stop us, we're not leaving the run.
Set up play action well enough.
We set up the play action. Not just that, but we're not going to be one-dimensional. If you look at the Chiefs, on the other hand, they didn't really run a lot of run plays, like design runs. Like, you've got Kareem Hunt with 3 carries, Samaje Perine with 1, Isaiah Pacheco with 3. Like, at this point, it's obvious that you're not going to run the ball. So our defense is eating because we're thinking we don't even need to defend the run. We can just go after the quarterback. We can just go hunt. Exactly. And that makes the DNs love that because it means they can play free. The linebackers, we were able to win just by rushing our base defensive front, which means that passing the ball,
blitzes in the entire game.
That's
everyone stepped back. Yeah. Everyone stepped back, and it's so hard to throw. Especially like if you're the Chiefs. Like, you've got guys like Xavier Worthy that can take the lid off a defense. DeAndre Hopkins, who I think he's more of like a possession receiver. So even when he looks covered, you can probably still pass it to him. But outside of that, I mean, they've really got to do some soul searching as far as getting their guys. I think they've got a receiver that's injured right now. He's part of that 1-2 punch. He had a really good season last year, except obviously injury this year. I can't remember his name, but he's.
I mean, the thing is,
currently out
with KC from the outside of the game. The reason why I think maybe they lean more pass is that I think the game plan was to try and have a quick passing game.
Dink and dunk, right? But
to negate the pass rush.
Nothing short was available.
And that's because the earlier hits and the pressure made Mahomes frantic. So then the passes are not coming off cleanly, and the receivers are also dropping passes. So that's not also helping. But also, I think one critical mistake I mentioned earlier in our chat when I was watching the game was the Chiefs should have done something different because all season Mahomes have been able to win them games in the fourth quarter, and that was their plan. But when they won the coin toss, remember what I said? They should probably have taken the ball and then, from the onset, feel out how the defensive line is going to play, and then just try and match a drive. Even if they had gotten a field goal from their first offensive series by taking the ball first, could have made the game a bit more competitive. I'm not saying they will win, but it could have made it more competitive in a sense that you figure, because we talk about chemistry between quarterbacks and receivers, right? So in the first series, we are playing dink and dunk on this defensive line, and we are connecting. It might slow down the pass rush a little bit, but not being able to do that meant no matter what you do, it's not gonna happen.
I mean, we still would have rushed base anyway. So
that's the thing. They were always getting home.
I'm just saying,
we would have always had 4 guys. All those guys were going to stay on the rush. We weren't going to give people.
Another thing that was also surprising was the fact that the Chiefs did not really run any screen passes. Andy Reid historically have always had a good screen game, so they get pass rushes. So I
Well,
wonder
the
why
one
they
time
never
I
even run
remember seeing
screen.
a running back screen, not a wide receiver screen, but a running back, a running back screen. The entire defensive line was sat on the screen. They literally they saw it coming.
Yeah, but maybe they've studied that screen on tape. But what I'm
That was
I mean, that's
standard
one
halfback
time.
screen, but they just saw it coming. They knew
Yeah,
it was.
but like I said, the Eagles post game press conference, they said they were very much prepared for whatever the Chiefs was going to throw at them. But what I'm saying is that historically, if we go back a couple of years ago, Andy Reid has always been a master at creating screens, no matter what defensive line you have. You know, um, sometimes the tight end
I,
screens to whereby they hide
yeah, to
Kelsey
Kelsey,
very
and
well.
do you know what I
You see,
realised
they never
is
and
just a note on that actually, right, Peter? A lot of the success at the tight end position this season has come through Noah Gray.
yeah, and he didn't get sniffed in this game.
And the one thing, looking at the film, you saw that was nobody was getting open down the field. And Mahomes, towards like when they're chasing the game, though, he was looking further down the field, then closer, right? The only thing that was ever open was the check down, and that was not always open.
No.
And by the time he got back to the check down, he was on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Or he was running for his life.
The Eagles secondary played outstanding. I mean, all year, like I said, famously,
they
like
don't let people
how,
get free.
No, but like how legendary Hall of Fame defensive tackle Warren Sapp always says this, and it's true, and there's a pure testament of the Eagles defense, which is the front end and the back end go work together. If you have a
And they
strong
did.
pass rush and you have a tight coverage, a lot of offenses will not have joy because they are working in tandem.
And you know that the Cooper DeJean pick six, right? That was all from the front, causing him to have to roll out, and then Cooper's just watching Mahomes' eyes and reading that entire play. And that came from that. All of it working in harmony. Now,
yeah, absolutely.
The last thing I would like to say on this is, well, if somebody had said to you that Saquon's going to go for what, 2 yards a clip? And you're still going to put up this amount against the Chiefs, would you have believed them, Will?
No, I think I was saying in the show previous to the preview for the Super Bowl that this was going to be the challenge. Really, I knew that if you put that many resources to stopping Saquon, it's going to work. But what's going to happen is Hurts is going to have to throw the ball to win the game. So they dared him to throw, and lo and behold, he was doing it.
He played well. No, there was one particular throw in this game that I loved of his, and it's not even the Devontae Smith pass, right? It's a back shoulder throw to AJ Brown on the sideline.
Yeah. Hurts is very good. Hurts is really good.
That one throw showed me he is like his timing is like good tonight. It's all good.
Yeah, a lot of QBs have specialities that they're very good at. Hurts is very good at sideline seam throws. Like he's very good. If you look at all of like his big explosive plays throughout the years in general, he's always hit his guys in stride on the outside.
So this was the back shoulder. Like
this couldn't have been
AJ Brown's going to beat the receiver, and despite the referees at the start, obviously everyone was having a whinge after that first drive. Nobody really took a notice of them, and there was a reason behind it, because that defensive line didn't allow them to.
Yeah.
The defensive line just took over the game, and
they were
that's
too busy
it.
watching. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes making sure he's not going to be knocked out of the game, rather than
No,
watching what was going
but
on
it's true,
downfield.
and
The refs were too busy watching that tackle box.
but then we got to also give a bit of credit to the crew because I think they settled down after the earlier flags, and yes, the defensive line did that. But one thing I was pleased is the fact that they didn't start calling unnecessary roughing bogus calls on the
Yeah,
defensive line because
No, because
they are
he
sure
was getting hit, but he was getting hit legitimately. People
was
weren't
getting
going
hit
low.
fairly.
They were
yeah,
just bringing him down to the ground. That was the thing.
Yeah,
yes, they were, but I agree with you. But what I'm saying is, remember
It didn't
how in
get
the
out of
regular
hand. Yeah, it
season,
didn't get out of hand. Yeah.
yeah, in the regular season, they were punishing teams from hitting Mahomes, like even sacking him just regular sack. They were calling it for the softest of touches. But in the Super Bowl, they let it go because they realized we can't, make dubious calls like that.
No,
You
and
know.
not more than the early dubious calls that they did make. But
Well,
that's
they
by
kind
the
of counted
by.
themselves out.
They sorted themselves out. They weren't the story in this game in the end. That was the
Which is
important
good.
thing. Eagles were great defensively. Offensively, Hurts showed that in a big game he can do what is needed to win the game. He wasn't spectacular in this game in terms of his passing, but he was good.
he did what he needed to do.
He did what
I
he needed to do, and that's all you need to do in a big game.
yeah,
Don't need to be spectacular, especially when your defense is that good, right?
yeah.
Now, well, fans across the world, whoever's watching, put your thoughts on whether you think this is the start of something great for the Eagles. Do you think they're going to be able to go again next year? Do you think they're going to be what next for the Chiefs as well? Because the Chiefs, obviously, such a chasing defeat. They were chasing 3 in a row, but the glaring issues have always been there, right? We've seen it this season. We know that their record kind of flattered them more than like they weren't that amazing of a team in terms of like the record. We know they were going to be there or thereabouts. It was more of when they come up against somebody who was this great, they were found wanting. So put your thoughts back down below, and we'll catch everybody throughout the off season. We're going to talk about free agency. We're going to talk about everything around the NFL, and we'll catch you then.